Hey YouTubers, it's me, Lonnie Clark, Nuts for Art and Beyond Extinction. And I'm just going to get right into this. I'm going to read another extension of Black Like Me. And we are on page 38. And let me just start in. And this is a book written by John Howard Griffin, Black Like Me. It documents his experience of having turned his skin black. He was a white journalist in 1959. Turned his skin black, and this is his documentary evidence, his entries of his experience of this. This book, I might add, pivoted white people into the movement to end white supremacy in the United States. Page 38, November 10th through the 12th, and this is 1959. 2 days of incessant walking, looking mostly for jobs. I wanted to discover what sort of work an educated Negro, nicely dressed, could find. I met no rebuffs, only gentleness when they informed me they could not use my services as a typist, a bookkeeper, etc. The patterns became the same. Each day at the shine stand, we had the same kind of customers. Each day we cooked food and ate on the sidewalk. Each day we fed the beggar and the pigeons. The widow woman dropped by on both days. I gently let her know I was married. Sterling said she asked about me, proposing to invite me to her house for Sunday dinner. I stayed at the stand less and less. Among Negroes, I was treated with the most incredible courtesies, even by strangers. One night, I decided to go to a Negro movie house. I walked up Dryads and asked a young boy if he could tell me the way. "If you'll just wait a minute, I'll show you the way," he said. I stood on the corner, and in a moment he returned. We began walking. He was a first-year student at Dillard University, hoping to become a sociologist, to do something for our people. The walk appeared to be endless. We must have gone at least 2 miles when I asked, "Do you live over here in this direction?" "No, I live back there where you saw me." "But this is taking you way out of your way." "I don't mind. I enjoy the talk." When we reached the movie, he asked, "Do you think you can find the way back?" "Oh yes, I don't have any trouble. If you aren't sure, I can find out what time the feature ends and come back for you." Stupefied that he would walk these miles as a courtesy to a stranger, I suggest he let me buy him a ticket for the show and we could walk back together. "No thanks, I have to get some studying done, but I'll be glad to come back for you." "I wouldn't think of it. At least let me pay you something. This has been a great favor." He refused the money. The next morning I went to the Y Cafe next door for a breakfast of grits and eggs. The elderly gentleman who ran the cafe soon had me talking, or rather listening. He foresaw a new day for the race. Great strides had been made, but greater ones were still to be made. I told him of my unsuccessful job hunting. He said it was all part of the pattern of economic injustice. You take a young white boy. He can go through school and college with a real incentive. He knows he can make good money in any profession when he gets out. But can a Negro in the South? No. I've seen many brilliant grades in college. And yet, when they come home in the summers to earn a little money, they have to do the most menial work. And even when they graduate, it's still a long, hard pull. Most take postal jobs or preaching or teaching jobs. This is the cream. What about the others, Mr. Griffin? A man knows no matter how hard he works, he's never going to quite manage taxes and prices eating up more than he can earn. He can't see how he'll ever have a wife and children. The economic structure just doesn't permit it unless he's prepared to live down in poverty and have his wife work too. That's part of it. Our people aren't educated because they either can't afford it or else they know education won't earn them the jobs it would a white man. Any kind of family life, any decent standard of living seems impossible from the outset. So a lot of them, without even understanding the cause, just give up. They take what they can, mostly in pleasure, and make the grand gesture, the wild gesture, because what have they got to lose if they die in a car wreck or a knife fight or something equally stupid? Yes, and then these things that cause the whites to say that we're not worthy of first-class citizenship. He dropped his hands to his side hard in frustration. Isn't it so? They make it impossible for us to pay much in taxes because we haven't much of income. And then they say that because they pay the most in taxes, they have the right to have the things that they want. It's a vicious circle, Mr. Griffin, and I don't know how we'll ever get out of it. They put us low and then blame us for being down there and say that since we are low, we can't deserve our rights. Others entered, ordered breakfast, and joined the conversation. Equal job opportunities, Mr. Gale said. That's the answer to the tragedy of our young people. What's needed? I asked. What kind of wisdom can overcome the immense propaganda of the racists and the hate groups? People read this poison, and it's often presented in a benevolent tone, even a kind tone. Many sincerely think the Negro, because of his very Negro-ness, could not possibly measure up to white standards in work performance. I read recently where one of them said the equality of education and job opportunity would be an even greater tragedy for us. He said it would quickly prove to us that we can't measure up, disillusion us by showing us that we are in fact inferior. I wish those kinds of soul wouldn't be so protective. I know plenty who'd be willing to take the chance of being disillusioned, the proprietor laughed. They're about 50 years behind the times, an elderly man said. The social scientists have shown this is wrong. Our own people have proven themselves in every field, not just in a few, but thousands. How can the racists deny these proofs? They don't bother to find out about them, Mr. Gale said flatly. We need a conversation of morals, the elderly man said. Not just superficially, but profoundly, and in both races. We need a great saint and enlightened common sense. Otherwise, we'll never have the right answers when these pressure groups, those racists, super patriots, whatever you want to call them, tag every move toward racial justice as communist-inspired, Zionist-inspired, Illuminati-inspired, Satan-inspired, part of some secret conspiracy to overthrow the Christian civilization. Wow, that was a comment made on my page that I deleted this last week. And we're in 2024. So if you want to be a good Christian, you mustn't act like one. That makes sense, Mr. Gale said. That's what they claim. The minute you give me my rights to vote, when I pay taxes, to have a decent job, a decent home, a decent education, then you're taking that first step towards race mixing. And that's part of the great secret conspiracy to ruin civilization, to ruin America. So if you want to be a good American, you've got to practice bad Americanism. That makes sense too, said Mr. Gale. Maybe it'd take a saint after all to straighten out such a mess. We've reached a poor state when people are afraid that doing the decent and right thing is going to help the communist conspiracy, the proprietor said. I'm sure a lot of people are held back just on that point. Any way you look at it, we're in the middle. It's hard for me to understand how letting me have a decent job so I can raise my children in a better home and give them a better education is going to help the enemies of my country. Walking along Dryads through the ghetto, I realized that every informed man with whom I had spoken, in the intimate freedom of the colored bond, had acknowledged a double problem for the Negro. First, the discrimination against him. Second, and almost more grievous, his discrimination against himself. His contempt for the blackness that he associates with his suffering. The willingness to sabotage his fellow Negroes because they are part of the blackness he has found so painful. "Want something, mister?" a white merchant said as I passed. I glanced at him sitting in the doorway in his junkie store. "Come on in," he wheedled, sounding for the world as though he were pimping for the shoes he had on display. I had not gone 10 feet when I heard him solicit something else in the same tone. "Want something, mister?" "Yeah, but you ain't my type," the man behind me answered without humor. On Charter Street in the French Quarter, I walked towards Brennan's, one of New Orleans' famous restaurants. Forgetting myself for a moment, I stopped to study the menu that was elegantly exposed in a show window. I read, realizing that a few days earlier, I could have gone in and ordered anything on the menu. But now, though I was the same person, with the same appetite, the same appreciation, and even the same wallet, no power on earth would get me inside this place for a meal. I recalled hearing some Negroes say, "You can live here all your life, but you're never going to get into one of those great restaurants except as a kitchen boy." The Negro often dreams of things separated from him only by a door, knowing that he is forever cut off from experiencing them. I read the menu carefully, forgetting that Negroes do not do such things. It is too poignant, like the little boy peering in the candy store window. It might affect the tourist. I looked up to see the frowns of disapproval that can speak so plainly and so loudly without words. The Negro learns this silent language fluently. He knows by the white man's look of disapproval and petulance that he is being told to get on his way, that he is stepping out of line. It was a day of giving the gracious smile and receiving the gracious rebuff as I asked again and again about jobs. Finally, I gave up and went to the Shine stand. From there, I set out to return at dusk to Dryads. But I had walked too far. My legs gave out. At Jackson Square, a public park, I found a long, curving bench and sat down for a rest for a moment. The park appeared deserted. A movement through the bushes attracted my attention. I looked to see a middle-aged white man across the park slowly fold the newspaper he was reading, get to his feet, and amble toward me. The fragrance of his pipe tobacco preceded him, reassuring me. Racists are not the pipe-smoking type, I thought to myself. With a perfect courtesy, he said, "You'd better find yourself someplace else to rest." I took it as a favor. He was warning me so that I could get out before someone insulted me. "Thank you," I said. "I didn't know we weren't allowed in here." Later, I told the story at the Y and discovered that the Negroes have the right to sit in Jackson Square. This individual simply did not want me there. But at that time, I did not know it. I left, sick with exhaustion, wondering where a Negro could sit to rest. It was walk constantly until you could reach a bus, but keep on the move unless you have business somewhere. If you stop to sit on the curb, a police car will pass and probably ask you what you're doing. I haven't heard none of the Negroes speak of police harassment, but they have warned me that at any time the police see a Negro idling, especially one they do not recognize, they will surely question him. This is worrisome, certainly an experience any Negro wants to avoid. I walked over to Claiborne and caught the first bus that passed. It took me out to Dillard University, a beautiful campus. I was too tired to explore it, however, and sat on a bench waiting for another bus into town. Buses were inexpensive to ride, and it was a good way to rest. Night was near when I finally caught the bus going toward town. 2 blocks before Canal, the bus makes a left turn at Claiborne. I rang the bell to get off at the stop. The driver pulled to a halt and opened the door. He left it open until I reached it. I was ready to stop off when the door banged shut in my face. Since he had to remain there waiting for the clear passage through traffic, I asked him to let me off. I can't open the door all night, he said impatiently. He waited another full minute, but refused to open the door. Will you please let me off at the next corner then? I asked, controlling my temper carefully, not to say or do anything that would jeopardize the Negro's position in the area. He did not answer. I returned to my seat. A woman watched me with sympathetic anger, as though she in no way approved of this kind of treatment. However, she did not speak. At each stop, I sounded the buzzer, but the driver continued through the next 2 stops. He drove me a full 8 blocks past my original stop and pulled up only then when some white passengers wanted to get off. I followed them to the front. He watched me, his hand on the lever that would spring the door shut. May I get off now? I asked quietly when the others had stepped down. Yeah, go ahead, he said finally, as though he had tired of his cat and mouse game. I got off, sick, wondering how I could ever walk those 8 blocks back to my original stop. In all fairness, I must add that this is the only example of deliberate cruelty I encountered on any of the city buses in New Orleans. Even though I was outraged, I knew he did not commit this indignity against me, but against my black flesh, my color. This was an individual act by an individual, but certainly not typical. So we're at 17 minutes. I'm going to stop here. We're on page 45. Pick it up on November 14th. Thank you to everybody who is liking this video. There's a few people who my algorithms or analytics are saying you actually are watching the whole, listening to the whole 20 minutes. So that's super awesome. I know it's only a few people, and I'm a tiny channel. The few comments that I get that encourage me, I really appreciate it. I would really love your thumbs up and your likes and subscribes. Be sweet to be able to build the channel a little bit. And if you're going to leave mean comments, just don't bother. I'm just deleting them. And if you persist, I'm going to block you. Anyways, you guys, put your courage feet on, and please don't go buy this book. You can read it yourself, probably way better, way faster than I'm doing, but I'm going to persist for those of you who actually don't read or can't read or have trouble reading. Anyways, put your courage feet on. Ciao. Turn this guy off.